Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show on television. Here on The Point of View, we get the right guests. We ask them relevant questions on issues that matter to you. We have a different show for you in a way because we sat down with the outgoing CEO of MTN Ghana, Selorm Adadevoh, who after 5.5 years of running Ghana's largest telecommunications firm, sat with me before an audience of probably 50 people, some of who are telco chief executives, some are media practitioners, to reflect on leadership, transformation, and excellence. We also spoke about his new appointment as the Group Chief Commercial Officer. All of that and more when we come back before an audience. Enjoy.
Let me see.
She's never had a toothache before.
There might be a cavity. Don't you use Pepsodent?
We used to, but I'll try the new one.
Ah, that's why.
But doesn't every toothpaste give cavity protection?
Not really. Pepsodent's Cavity Fighter repairs tiny invisible holes to give 10 times stronger teeth. Will you trust Pepsodent?
Definitely.
Pepsodent, 10 times stronger teeth.
Use Pepsodent's Cavity Fighter.
Whether it's 1924, 2024, or 2124, we've always known that you are driven by your sense of safety and well-being. It is what drives us to see you through from start to finish, from small to big. And in the last 100 years, as you have evolved, so have we also expanded to serve you in many ways. From cradle to grave, with expertise in insurance, life, pensions, properties, health, and for those beautiful memorable goodbyes. It's 2024, and in all our markets, our pedigree is recognized, our strength respected, our expertise valued, and our solutions sought by all who desire an advantage in life. Experience the time-tested and truly trusted 100 years legacy of Ghana's oldest insurer. Take charge of your future now. Insurance, life, pensions, property management, funeral services, health insurance. Enterprise, your advantage.
To commemorate the transition of the CEO of MTN Ghana to a higher role, reflecting on 5-ish years of work in the Ghana market. Selorm Adadevoh, thank you so much for talking to us here at MTN Ghana.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. Good afternoon, everyone.
For a man who oversees a large company who is about to take a big job, you look very relaxed. What's the secret to your calmness?
It hasn't sunk in yet.
Amazing stuff. But look, I recall the press release that I think Georgina or somebody sent to us somewhere in May, June 2018, announcing that you had been appointed CEO. I think you would be the second Ghanaian. Do you remember that period? What's your fondest thought around saying yes to MTN and actually coming down to take up that role 2018?
No, I do remember that period. I don't think anyone would forget it. It was quite a major event in my life and in my career. So, if anybody had said I was going to leave Ghana in 2014 and come back in 2018 as the CEO of MTN, I don't think it would have been imaginable. So, for me, this was a major milestone in my entire career. And I remember it quite vividly, actually. I mean, the discussions with MTN took a while. And at that time, I had to make some decisions. So, obviously, this was the preference for the decisions I had to make, but it wasn't quite straightforward. So I do remember that time a lot. This was a role that I doubt anyone would have turned down for whatever reason, and I was looking forward to it, but of course, it's also a very daunting task to take on the CEO of MTN. And I had to sort of rationalize in my head, how this was going to work. You're coming in. I mean, there are a lot of different things that I had to think about. I had to think about coming in as an external person. I believe I was the first CEO to come in to MTN Ghana who was not previously within the MTN leadership team. So that was a first. Yeah. And certainly, the dynamics that I had to deal with were quite unique. So I thought about all of those and how I was going to settle in and do what I had to do as a leader and as a CEO of MTN. But of course, it also meant coming home, which was quite exciting. And that also has its own dynamics as well. So quite interesting time.
I see a contrast. So you worked with Millicom at the time and then Digicel all over the world. So you were coming from a different company to MTN, arguably smaller companies to a bigger company. But you're coming back home.
Absolutely.
So there was this duality there. What was the thought process like? What was your perception, for example, around what MTN was? Because you never worked for MTN. And your first job in MTN is to come and run the Ghana office as an outsider coming back home. Just walk me a bit through that thinking around that period.
It's quite interesting because when you're on the outside, what you perceive of MTN could be very interesting. And when I was at Millicom, of course, my entire focus was to teach MTN a lesson.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Confessions of a telecommunications hitman. Wow.
It was really to demonstrate that, you could shake up the big elephant, And, we did our part. We did our part at the time. But I'd always felt that MTN had such great opportunity at its foot. And, I'd love to be in there. I used to have discussions with some people whose names I can't disclose because they're in very strategic places right now. But I used to have discussions with them when I was in Haiti about what I would do if I became the CEO of MTN. And it was hypothetical at the time. But without understanding the ins and outs of MTN, the culture and all of that, you imagine all these things on the outside until you come in. But I'll say the one big thing that was quite instrumental was just MTN had this force which was almost like a cocoon of team members. And to crack that cocoon from the outside was close to impossible. And a lot of us had wondered what happens in the cocoon. What happens in that house, what happens in the cocoon. And I was eager to find out myself. So if there was nothing that was interesting about the role, that was the one thing that was interesting to me. I was now going to get into the cocoon and I was going to understand all the things I'd been trying to understand from the outside. So,
what about the Africa pitch? Because I recall you talk about working in the UK, 4 months, 400 applications, one job, couldn't drive. Then you worked all over. Was Africa a big thing? Because I've studied abroad as well, and there's this debate about should I come back home or should I stay abroad? Was the fact that MTN is an Africa-focused company big for you, and how did that feature in your thinking?
No, it was very big, extremely big. I mean, all my life, I've always said, and I remember when I had my first email account, which was a Yahoo account, and I learned how to put these permanent signatures in my account. And I had a saying which basically said, we Africans, always complain about Africa, but we're not willing to put ourselves in Africa to help Africa progress. And it was more eloquently described. I can't remember exactly how I put it, but it was at the bottom of my email. I mean, I've attempted to come back to Africa a lot of times. When I was in the UK, I came back to do something in the ISP space. I helped set up 2 telecoms companies. So I've done a lot on the continent, but none of them was permanent. I kept coming in and going back out, coming in and going back out. Central Africa, I did some work there. So Africa has always featured, and I've probably moved back to this continent more times than most people in this place. I think I moved back to the continent 5 times in my career, something like that. Yeah. I kept coming back because this was important to me. So MTN's Africa presence, absolutely big, but not only that. MTN has an Africa presence, but it's also a globally recognized brand. And when I was at Digicel, I remember we did a case study on MTN to look at how a successful telecoms company operates. So there are all these things that made MTN very special. And apart from the fact that it's the leading company in the country. And I mean, I'm sure the aspiration of most people working in telecoms outside of MTN are to come and work for MTN, and I was one of them. So,
final point on this, in this junction, what was the most surprising thing about MTN for you then as an outsider coming in, when you got in? What surprised you most about this behemoth when you entered?
Look, I mean, there were a lot of things. I mean, I think the big one for me really was, you know, I mean, I had a chance to work in very small, nimble, agile companies. You know, Millicom was an innovation of itself. You know, it was driven largely by very quick innovation. Speed to market was incredible. And if you thought Millicom was high in speed to market, then you go to Digicel, which was on like a cocktail of steroids. I mean, things were happening in minutes, not hours. And I would say the biggest was a change of pace at MTN. And here we'll talk about MTN's pace of getting things to market. We talk about MTN's leadership in innovation.
Yeah.
But it's because there is a vision that allows a lot of time for that to happen. Whereas in other places I had worked, you know, you can come up with the vision yesterday and the product is out tomorrow. So it was a very short timeline compared to MTN's cycle of getting things to the market. So that was one big one.
Yeah.
But then the second one was just how close the family is, right? I mean, I've worked in places where there's a closeness, but MTN's was different. And it maybe explained the cocoon and how difficult it was to crack at the time. I mean, if you're an MTN, you're loved, you're everything. You have a big family here. And when you're outside, you almost feel like, man, even if you had brothers and sisters here, you probably have to give it up until you join MTN. So the sense of family was incredible. And, you know, it's probably one of the biggest strengths that MTN has today.
And I'm sure because of your previous work in mobile financial services and, of course, your finance and technology background as well, did that, in a sense, give you what the expectation was? Because this was an industry in transition as well. Coming in 2018, was your experience an implied target? It's like this company is transitioning from just voice data into MFS. And we need a guy who can do quick things fast within that space. Was that in the brief, or that was more like a given?
No, look, I mean, my brief was, and maybe, you know, the CEO should be here to see how things have changed. At the time, the group CEO was Rob Shooter. And I remember my interview with him where he said, look, I'd always positioned myself as a transformation guy. You know, the guy who comes in and does a transformation. That's what I did at Millicom, taking their financial services business from number 3, number 4 in the market to number 1. And I went to Digicel. Of course, Haiti was a declining market, managed to turn it around, but also establish the largest and most successful financial services business in the Caribbean. So my CV was littered with transformation, and Rob said to me, you know, I don't know if you're the right guy because everything is fine in Ghana. We don't need a transformation. We just need someone to hold the steer and steady the ship. That's all we need, you know? Then I said to him, I can do that too, because I wanted a job, you know?
Yeah.
But when I came in, you know, I sort of said, look, there is a big need for us to take that next step in its evolution. And maybe my technology background and my journey, I mean, Digicel was very advanced in digital. It was very sophisticated on agile and things just, you know, pace of moving things ahead. So maybe from that exposure and experience, I saw an opportunity to transform and to move the business forward that perhaps wasn't obvious if you just looked at the results of the business before. And that became sort of my objective. I did a pitch to the leadership to say, I really do think there's an opportunity here on digital, on modernization of our infrastructure, on going into things like fixed wireless access, which ended up becoming things like TurboNet. I saw the opportunity to do things that perhaps wasn't so obvious before.
What I didn't tell you was that before you came in, we agreed on a theme for the program, and the 3 keywords were leadership, transformation, and excellence. So it's funny you said you are and I haven't seen your CV, by the way, the transformation guy. So I think you guys should put your hands together for yourselves. You've got the T right. And this is a conversation here at MTN's head office. We're talking to Outgoing CEO of MTN Ghana, Selorm Adadevoh. He's been here for 5 years. He's going on to bigger things within the group, and we're chatting to him on his reflections on those three issues: leadership, transformation, and excellence. So you jump in, you come in June, and in less than a year, the company is listing. So it's like you are thrown at the deep end. Just walk me through some of the big ticket things. From us, from the outside, the listing was big because this is the biggest company in Ghana, and now you're basically saying, come and join us. Any reflections on that process? What went well? What didn't go well?
Yeah, no, look, I joined third week in June. 20th of June was my first day here. And the listing started in May. So the process, I'm sure there were all these other marketing things that would have happened even before May. And, we were due to close the subscription period around July. So I was right bang in the middle. And I remember when I came in, there was very little said about what I had to do in terms of the IPO. Mm-hmm. And then, but I was lucky. I was quite fortunate. Sometimes you get into situations and you just realize, God had a plan for you, right? When I was in the US, I did a lot of mergers and acquisition consulting, which meant I spent a lot of time with banks and companies trying to either be bought or sold, right? Mm-hmm. I did mostly sell side, so companies were trying to be sold. And as a result, you would get involved in pitching mm-hmm. and trying to sell the company. MTN was selling, so at the time they were also in a sell side deal, but this time listing that on the market, on the stock exchange. So I was fairly comfortable with the process, which was probably unique to my background and wouldn't have been the same for other people. And it could have been very scary to come in and within weeks having to talk about an IPO and trying to, list on the market and figuring out how to take the business forward. So, from that perspective, I was quite fortunate, but it was very daunting to come in the middle of an IPO and then have to lead it to the end. In the end, we listed on 5th of September. And, so I saw it through till that point. And I believe after that, we had interviews about the outcome and the results. The one thing I would say, though, was that the process was also largely in place. Yeah. So, my job was not to drive a process. The process was in place, it was running smoothly, everything was going well, and I did very little with that. I think it was really after the listing that my involvement became significant.
So I would say that for the first major thing that you owned, if I said it was the launch of LTE Advanced Technology 4G Plus in 2019, that would be your baby, as in fully began, executed by you.
Sure.
Correct? How was that?
It was exciting. One of the things I learned, as a young business person was you always want to figure out what's your biggest driver of success, right? And I usually would look at the 3-year landscape to try to figure out how to grow the business. And I remember I spoke to the current CTO, Thomas, around July 2018. Yeah. At the time, the CTO was leaving and he was going to come in. And I still remember this discussion very well because I didn't want anyone to come and argue about our technology strategy because I figured we needed to go into a particular direction. So the two things I asked him, one of them was about modernizing our network and his appetite to modernize. And then the second one was around fixed wireless access, which is, TurboNet, and where we ended up again, because there were a lot of debates internally about why you want to go down that path, if it was a necessary path. And I just wanted to make sure we could explore those things. And he was extremely bullish. He had actually done some of these things where he was coming from in Zambia. So, we clicked, and I knew we could together do some of the things we had set out to do. So 4G Plus was the first one, which was, how do we take the network performance one level higher? Because if you secure your network, it really simplifies your life. You can do a lot of things on the commercial side that you couldn't even think of if you didn't have the infrastructure to support it. And without a strong network, honestly, you're in a lot of trouble. So I figured the first place to focus was technology and leverage my background, coming from a technology background, having worked in this space, to maybe create this opportunity and then move to try to figure out how do you do your commercial, how do you come up with your commercial strategy to support the technology advancement you're putting in place. So 4G Plus was a big deal for us.
There's a sense in which MTN has been punished for its success. This highly controversial, significant market player thing, which happened under your watch. So in a sense, you made MTN so successful that the regulator thought that we had to rein you in so that your pricing couldn't go beyond a certain level, below a certain level and that kind of thing. What's your reflection on that? Because again, you are Ghanaian. To acquire even the 4G license, the whole process, right? Any disappointments there that, look, here's a Ghanaian running this large company in a period of transition, and we're doing very well. But the system seems to think you have some unfair advantage, and it's almost punitively pricing a social good that you're going to use to unlock technology. I mean, I'm sure that was a bit difficult for you to take, wasn't it?
No, it was. I mean, being declared dominant is not a great thing. It's never a great thing for leadership. I mean, I have to say the sentiment would have started before I joined, but maybe it got a lot more pronounced after I joined for whatever reason. From my perspective as a Ghanaian, I always think of all of this from the viewpoint of how do we use our technology and the investments we put into these specific business areas to drive the type of growth we need in the country, right? And if you look at it from that perspective, then the question is collectively, right? And there are all these debates about, is the market crowded? Do we have too many players in the market and all of that? But at the same time, when you look at the opportunity that's untapped, your question is, there's huge opportunity still in the market, even today as we speak. So why wouldn't the policy steer towards taking the opportunities to grow the entire pie? Because what happens with that is Ghana becomes a much more sophisticated country from a technology standpoint. It becomes more competitive within the sub-region, but also becomes more attractive to the types of investments we're seeking to drive other sectors of the country, right? So if I look at health tech, I look at med tech, I look at agri tech, these are all technology-based specialist areas that can transform industries. And none of that work is happening today because we're confined to the telecom space, and we're saying that we need to limit the investment so that the industry creates or gets a certain balance, which on the one hand is very true, but on the other hand, you're giving up the economic potential of an entire country that could be enhanced through technology if you approached it a different way. So for me, it's always been, how do we get this country to become that special beacon within the sub-region? And how can technology be the fulcrum or the driver of that beacon? And for me, that's still an opportunity that we have in front of us.
I was listening to a CEO recently talk about how in their company, this is a global CEO, he personally has worked less on things to do with his business. He's been dealing with political, economic, and social things. Question to you, do prospective CEOs underestimate the importance of those? I mean, technically you're great. You're a technology guy, you understand your finance, you know your numbers, marketing is solid, HR is great. But if you become a CEO of a large company, whether it's Haiti, in Ghana, Nigeria, do people underestimate the regulatory, the political, the things that have nothing to do with essentially what you learned in school, right? Talk to me a bit about how you had to grow into that and how you leveled up in that space.
Yeah, it's a very good point. To be honest, in my interviews, when I was asked, what are my weak points, those are some of the things I highlighted, because I've always felt that I can drive strategy. I have ideas that can drive growth in the business. I just need the room to do it. And everything else is a distraction, and that was my viewpoint. Luckily, I didn't have to deal with some of these pressures in my other roles. When I was in Haiti, I didn't have as much of an external environment impact that I had here, or that I've had here. But so in essence, you're able to spend the time to do what you enjoy, what you know, and grow in that space. So I've grown from 1 to maybe 4 or 5 out of 10. dealing with this market and the different pressures and the complexity of the Ghana market. I mean, the Ghana market is, a microcosm of complexity on all dimensions, from regulatory, political, social, economic, everything, right? So I've had to learn very quickly. I'm still learning. I would never even begin to think that I have learned enough in this space. We learn, and we're always talking about different approaches to things. It's been an accelerated growth for me. But one of the things that has helped me is I've also, when you're going through these things, making decisions can be very difficult, right? And I just decided to base my decisions on a very small set of principles, and if I stick by it, we just keep going. And sometimes, you upset people, sometimes you don't, but it makes your decision making a lot more streamlined, and at least from my perspective, a lot more effective as well.
I want you to elaborate on that. So you're CEO of Digicel in Haiti.
Yeah.
You're Black African in a Caribbean, predominantly Black French-speaking country, which was in turmoil, and you survived that. So it's on paper easier to come back to Ghana, where you were born, when you studied, to come and run MTN, right? But there's a sense in which being an expert in your own country can be confusing and can be tougher. Because I remember 2021, I went to interview somebody in one of the Volta region towns, and the chief says, when you go on air, tell Selorm to come home. And when he comes, tell him that the network in his village is not working well. Do you get me? And he was almost like he knows your father's house and you are some small boy. And as you come in, I was like, what are you talking about? So talk to me about, even though people feel, we are bringing a Ghanaian, there's a sense in which it's actually much tougher because the expectations are more, and you have to balance what the company wants with just some local nuance of knowing that, Charlie, this is my country, right? And people's expectations of you is higher. Just talk a bit about that.
Look, there are 2 or 3 different sides to this. The first side is, for starters, a lot of these large companies haven't trusted Ghanaians to lead these businesses because they are concerned. That was one of the reasons I left Millicom, of course, right? They didn't believe that, they were ready to trust the business into the hands of a Ghanaian. So there's the one part which is we Ghanaians have a responsibility to demonstrate that we can actually lead such companies and we can lead them well. For me, that's one part, right? If I was given back to my country, then being able to demonstrate that Ghanaians have the capability, they have the intellectual capacity, the leadership credentials and profile to lead companies like this, extremely important, because this will open doors for other Ghanaians in other large companies as well, or at the very least encourage other people not to discount what Ghanaians can do. But the point you make on, how tough it can also be as a Ghanaian, there are also 2 sides. Because as a Ghanaian, there are certain conversations you can have. And the trust triangle is a lot tighter to Ghanaians. People tell you a lot more than they would if you weren't Ghanaian. And you tend to experience the reality from the parade, right? And if you're non-Ghanaian, then you see the parade a lot. And your sense of reality will be the parade, but behind that is a lot of complexity and a lot of things that are not said. And that's what I went through in Haiti, right? When I was in Haiti, of course, everywhere I go, everybody's smiling at me and receiving me well, and everything was fine. But behind all of that, it wasn't fine. But people just couldn't say it. Whereas here, at least you understand what's not fine, and it may be distasteful, but at the very least, you have the opportunity to do something about it now or in the future. So there are multiple sides to all of this, but there is a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure because people are more familiar with you. Your stakeholders are also a lot. Relatives, friends, everything. Everybody's upset with you because when they call you, you don't pick up. And then they're like, since you became CEO, you don't mind us anymore. But nobody realizes that your time has changed significantly. So it's not the same. And you can't be the same person you were before you got the appointment. But people expect everything to be the same. Right? So those pressures are real. You don't get that when you're an expert CEO. But, these are some of the things that I will take as important development experiences. Because as a person, I've also grown in the process of how to manage these types of pressures so that I can at least maintain my sanity on a day-to-day basis. But it is a lot of pressure as a result.
Let's talk about financial performance. When you were announced to the media, they told us that your expertise was, of course, technology industry, innovation, but you could drive P&L, EBITDA improvement. They knew you could bring in those dollars. Are you able to tell us the direction of the curve? Let's use the top line, say revenue. When you took over, where was the company? Don't forget, within your period, there's been COVID as well, which brought a lot of people down. Just give us a sense of financial performance in the 5 years.
No, look, financial performance has been good. And, I'm quite happy with what we have delivered as a team and as a company. And it takes, like they say, it takes a village to educate somebody. But let me talk about a little bit about my philosophy around performance, because it's quite important before I talk about what the results have been. I've always believed, typically when you get a CEO job, you know your horizon is 2 to 3 years, and then you're going to move on. That's the typical, right? I mean, today, when I leave here, I'll be 5 years and 9 months, which would be the longest serving MTN Ghana CEO in the history of the business. Right?
Wow.
Thank you. So for me, and this has been the first time I have spent this long in any role or in any company in my entire life as well. So that says something. But my philosophy has always been, and something I had to prove to myself, that taking a medium-term view of performance is absolutely important. Because what it does is you focus more on structures and how businesses can run themselves. When you take a short-term view, you go for very quick revenue-generating initiatives that may not be in the interest of the business in the medium term. So you can achieve success, but that success will never be sustainable in the medium term. But because people know they won't be there when things become ineffective, it's okay, right? But, I mean, I came in thinking, look, my style has always been, when I went to Millicom, when I went to Digicel, it had always been build structures. You may suffer at the beginning because people are looking for quick performance. So you have to adopt this dual track approach of what are the short-term wins, but how do I keep my eye on this medium-term structural performance instruments that I'm going to put in place. And that's what I believe we've tried to do over the last, 5.5+ years. And the results have been really good. Doing the network modernization obviously means you've created a fundamental change to your infrastructure that allows you to grow over time. Creating a commercial framework and a mindset around how you handle commercial initiatives also allows you to grow the business in a certain way. Trying to figure out how to structurally change your cost basis so you're not just growing top line, but you're also reducing the cost to generate every incremental CD of revenue. Very important. These are the things that create a business that can last long. If you're not becoming more efficient every day, you'll get to a point where your business will collapse. You could be performing well, but at some point, that good performance will start to erode. So doing all of that has led us to the results that we have. And first of all, before I talk about the results, I have to thank the team. They've been exceptional. And this is maybe the one big thing that when I walk out of MTN Ghana, I would have to keep reminding myself.
Let's sound for the team.
Nothing happens without a team, and they've been exceptional in this. What we've achieved over the last 5.5 years or so is a 4x growth in revenue.
Wow.
And about a 6x growth in profitability.
Serious.
And that's significant. That's
4x growth in revenue, 6x in profitability over less than 6 years.
Yeah.
COVID inclusive.
COVID inclusive, yeah.
You're not giving me average. So you're saying year on year, 2018, 2019, 2020. So you did better in 2020 than 2019.
I did better, and it depends. What does that mean?
On the two, you gave me two top lines: revenue, profitability.
Yeah.
Would you say that every year the curve has been northwards?
Yeah. So look, the curve has been northwards every year.
Every year.
Every year. So,
wow.
So coming into the business, we've had to think about how to grow the business strategically every year. And that growth, thankfully has been positive. Now, COVID was a period where I guess everyone would have expected infrastructure companies to grow aggressively. But what people forget is you're limited by your capacity, right? At the same time, you're also limited by the supply chain issues that happened during COVID. So I don't believe that, and because we're already operating at close to capacity, we probably could have grown a lot more, but we couldn't because we had these physical constraints that limited our ability to bring in new capacity to the extent that we could. And we had to rely on things like free spectrum from the NCA, if you recall. So thanks to them for enabling us to be able to continue to drive business and make sure that the country stays productive. But we didn't grow as much as we could have. We grew better in 2019. Did COVID
bring to the fore the importance of what you did? Because I recall no meetings, nobody's going anywhere, and every single thing, including possibly cabinet meetings, will depend on the service you offer. That must have been incredibly big, but also high pressure.
No, it was. I mean, I don't think we've seen the pressure on the network grow so much in such a short time frame. That was obviously the biggest risk to our business. Is our network going to fall apart? Right? So we saw a lot of growth. I mean, I don't think we've seen that type of growth in 1 year in terms of traffic demand ever before, at least not in my time. So that was crazy. What COVID also taught us was perhaps our expectations of how much capacity was required to run an economy like Ghana was not ambitious enough. And the permanent changes that COVID brought in terms of people's adoption of certain tools, working online, all these things also changed. And there was a permanence that COVID has left behind. Even though COVID, is largely behind us, there was a permanence that it left behind on people's behaviors and people's appreciation for how to use the internet effectively for productive work.
You said something in a recent interview that in the COVID period, one of the things you had to learn was what to give up. Because as the company faced those constraints, you can't do all things. I thought that was pretty profound. Can you elaborate? What did you mean by that?
Yeah, look, when COVID started, there were all these things that were going on. There's life. Your first priority is people are getting sick and people are in hospital, they're struggling. It was life. And health and wellness became extremely important. Then, of course, you have your business, which to a large extent has been disrupted because your plans couldn't be delivered. You can't import equipment when you want to anymore. And you're at the mercy of, a supply chain that's pretty much non-functional. Movement has ground to a halt, but at the same time, demand is going up. There were also a lot of regulatory and political issues at the time that we had to deal with. And everybody was under a lot of stress because we're all learning about this disease and virus that nobody could explain, but at the same time, everything was happening. The other interesting thing was where we had our capacity was not where people were anymore because we built all our capacity where the businesses were. Now people are working from home. And you can't just carry a site and go and put it in someone's house. So there are a number of things. So what I meant by that thing was in a crisis, and this is something that I had to learn when I was in Haiti the hard way after the hurricane, was when you're in a crisis, one of the biggest decisions you need to make is what to focus on so you can do the best job on what you focus on. If you try to do everything, you're going to fail because it's an imperfect situation, it's chaotic at the time, and therefore you will fail, and you'll probably fail in the places that are most important. So if you can really narrow down and say, look, I'm going to give up A, B, and C, and then just focus on 2 or 3 things. Our primary focus was how do we keep our network up? That was it. And that helped us focus our attention to that, working with our vendors, and which are here today. It was all about how do we keep the network up, because there's a consequence not only to the business and people want to go onto the internet, but to the economy. The most effective way of people staying productive was through the internet.
Yeah.
So if we couldn't keep it up, the entire Ghana or the entire country becomes at risk. And that for us was the big thing. So that's what I meant by, making sure that you were able to give up certain things and just focus, because there were things that were more important than others.
Wow. This is Time with Selorm, a conversation with the outgoing CEO of MTN Ghana, Selorm Adadevoh, who after 5 years and 9 months of working in Ghana is on to bigger things. We'll talk about where he's going shortly. My name is Bernard Avle. I'm here before a crowd that's not applauding. They need to applaud a bit more. I'll tell you who we have here, but in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to turn to them to ask a few questions of Selorm. The sub-theme we've given ourselves is leadership, transformation, and excellence. Spoken a bit about excellence, a lot about transformation. Let's talk a bit about leadership. I was telling somebody, most CEOs and people who have power, to even enter their presence, you are talking to a big man. There's something they call big manism. You have to go through 6 secretaries. You have to be scanned. You put your phone in somewhere, By the time you get to the person, you're already demoralized and you know that you're a small boy. And I walk into your office, I get an embrace, and you're like, how are you keeping? How are the kids? So it's a different approach to you, right? So what's I don't want to say leadership philosophy or style, whatever, but how do you see leadership? Because your team, and I'm not saying to say your team is really rigorous. Georgina called me too many times. They're going through, they really work hard. They don't want anything to go wrong, but you're very cool. So what's going on here? What's going on here?
I don't know, but I've thought about my leadership style a lot. I remember when I first came through the doors at MTN, someone said to me that my leadership style isn't going to work. And I never really worked with a person much, so it was something that I thought about, but I thought, but how do you know my leadership style? Just because you see my disposition once or twice and the way I talk doesn't mean that I'm ineffective.
Yeah.
Right? So I noted it, and I thought maybe, in a few months, maybe years, I would have to change my style, but let me start what I know, and then we take it from there. Basically, look, for me, if you show people respect, and if you allow people to understand what the standard that's acceptable is, and give them the space to drive themselves to that standard, I believe you will get the best out of people. That's what I've tried to do. It hasn't always worked. In fact, there are times where we've had to have very tough discussions because the standard seems to have been lost on people. But ultimately, if people can be motivated intrinsically, you will get the best out of them. If you wake up in the morning coming to work and you're thinking, I really want to achieve this today. Nobody's asking you to achieve it, but you've told yourself, this is what I want to achieve today. That's the best place you can be, and that's the best place your team can be, because they are self-motivated and they're intrinsically motivated. But if you have to go with a stick telling people what they need to deliver every day, you won't get the best out of people. So people need a pride in what they do. And I've tried to bring this. I don't know if I've been successful, and I can't really say what you're seeing is as a result of that. But that's what I've tried to do. That's what I believe in. And my role is really to support. So when there are tough problems or tough decisions, I see myself as part of the team to bring my experience, to bring my intellectual capability to the team, to help solve the problem so that we can take the next step forward. So from that perspective, it's been very positive, and I've seen a lot of growth in where we started from as a team to where we are today. An enormous level of growth from a leadership standpoint, from an ownership standpoint, from a responsibility and drive standpoint. And MTN was already a successful company before I came.
Yeah.
So, it's just going through a different phase of growth and what's required. And once I leave, that next stage would require something else, which would also require its own transformation and change. to be able to deal with the next phase of growth for the business. So
You're going into a group position. We understand it's commercial. And you're joining Eben Asante on the group executive committee. So 2 questions in one. So there are 2 Ghanaians on this group executive committee. And for a small country in Africa, Ghana is not that small. It's significant to have 2 Ghanaians on that. What are your thoughts about that and your work with Eben? And number 2, in that space, what are you looking forward to in this new role, commercial, for the group?
Yeah. No, look, I mean, I do think, and one of the things I've said in the past, if you look at Ghana's track record within the MTN group, and Ghana's long-time contributions towards the MTN group, it has been enormous. It's been incredible. So to have 2 Ghanaians on the group exco, for me, really confirms the contribution of Ghana over time.
Okay.
I mean, I think this should have happened a long time ago, right? So, my only criticism will be it's come much later than it should have, because Ghana has been significant within the MTN group for a long time.
Yeah.
So that's the first one. I mean, obviously, Eben is my current boss, and we have to work and strategize and do things. Our roles are different when I get onto the group exco, but at the end of the day, our objectives for MTN Group would remain the same. We all want to drive growth and make sure the business can be the best business forward and can contribute towards Africa's progress. That's really what we're all fighting for. So I see a lot of our experience in Ghana, understanding the nuances of a market like Ghana, bringing a lot of richness to the discussions at the exco level, and bringing also our operational exposure to some of the decisions that we make at a group level. And that's what I would see us doing. But it will be an exciting time, but a challenging time as well. It will be a very different role from what I'm used to. So,
before I take questions, I was looking at the photo they sent when they brought out your press release in 2018. Clean shaven, no white. Talked a bit faster. Now you talk much slower, and there's a lot of white beard. It must be. I mean, I'm not sure where I'm going with this question, but I feel like you've grown. And it's also come at a cost, because it's. I'm not saying you're slow up there, but you're more. You were more. Yo. When you see me, yo Bernard, it's like yo Bernard. So I see. So is it just the physical thing? Is it that you're above 45, so you have to take it easy? What's going on? What's with the white beard on the side?
No, I told you that, coming from digital, things happen in minutes and hours. And it's a little longer at MTN, so I've had to slow down a bit, I've had to slow down a bit. No, but look, I've grown a lot.
Yeah.
I've grown a lot, and MTN has stretched me in different ways, I've always been, I worked, a lot of my career, I worked on things that I was in 100% control of. Right? As a consultant, it's knowledge-based consulting. So if I know something, then I can sell something. And you're in control. Whereas when you work in an operation, your control starts to reduce. But when the external environment impact is so high, as we've talked about, then what you control is even smaller. And it's a very different leadership, I guess. It's a very different leadership test for anyone in that sort of environment. So I've had to learn how to deal with an environment like this, and how to change my own style to suit the environment, and that has presented a lot of growth from a development standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, and also to let me understand what matters in sustaining growth in these businesses. MTN didn't get this far only based on its operational focus. You have to work with governments, you have to work with policyholders, you have to work with advocacy groups, you have to lead from a different perspective. And that's something that I'm taking away today. And your job is not only the operation, the technical competency. You have to lead in other areas so that the external environment inures to your benefit to be able to drive the initiatives you need to drive for the sustenance of the business.
Please put your hands together for Selorm. This is Time with Selorm, and it's a conversation on leadership, transformation, and excellence, marking close to 6 years of leading MTN Ghana. He's going on to bigger things. We are very privileged to have an audience of highly respected people. We have members of the Ghana Executive Committee. I won't mention the names, but if you can give me a wave, if you're a member of the big guys in MTN group in Ghana, just give me a wave. Give me a wave. Give me a wave. Wonderful. We're also privileged to be joined by very significant people in Ghana. We have the GGA President, Albert Jumfo. Give us a wave there. Thank you, sir. CIMG Ghana President, Mr. Jekum, is here with us. Media Foundation for West Africa, the Chief Executive, Suleiman Brahima, is here. We also have the lead for esports Ghana, Maximus Ametogo, technology guy, here with us as well. Long-term journalist is Nana now, so he's here with us as well. Put your hands together for him. Communications consultant, a journalist we look forward to talking to all the time. We're also surrounded by quite a number of media practitioners. We have another Suleiman. This is Suleiman Mahama. And we also have Samuel Dowona. We have a couple of friends from Graphic. All the journalists give us a wave as well. And then the CEO of ASEPA is also here, one of the CSOs, and Ni Odate Lamte as well. So quite a number of people in here. I don't know how I'm going to play this. I'm just going to make a mic available, and then we will take comments or questions or just rebukes, whatever you want to say to Selorm. So who's going to set the ball rolling? Samuel, you know, like when you think about a journalist in technology, Samuel Dowona is just incredible. You know, I remember interviewing him a few months ago about the evolution of the sector, and it was as if he lived through the whole thing. You know, he was talking about how it was Scancom to Space Phone to whatever. So Samuel, I'll give you the first question. Just talk to Selorm. Tell him you're happy he's going, or you're happy you're not happy.
Well, I mean, 5 years of Selorm, I just have to say congratulations. I think he's done very well. I think my first experience with Selorm was at Millicom, and that was the first time I experienced that you can buy airtime for somebody on another network.
Okay.
With your network. So like at Tigo. And I don't know whether that thing went to market though from Tigo at the time. But Selorm introduced it to me. Selorm said, I can buy MTN airtime for you with my Tigo.
Wow.
Let's try it now.
Wow.
And he tried it. I was like, it was like magic for me at the time. But I don't know whether from that point on it went, wow. Of course, because we can put our hands together. Today is very common. Today you can go anywhere. But I think that was my first, before he even went to digital, I think.
Wow.
Right. So Selorm has always been a very powerful technology person.
Wow.
So for me, I would say 5 years and 9 months, congratulations. And we are very, 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 very proud of you.
Yeah.
We are so proud of you that we have, you know, like, I mean, when Eben took over MTN Ghana, what he did, we were proud. We were like, Ghanaian has taken over now, and look at where he's taking the company. So we thought that, hey, who is going to step into Eben's shoes?
Yeah.
And then Selorm comes in, and you can see it. I mean, the numbers are there. You saw the top line. 4 times revenue, 6 times profit. I think there is something wonderful, and we are very proud of you that going out of Ghana to the group. And very soon we are going to hope, because now I think the CEO, group CEO is a Zimbabwean, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully we are going to have a Ghanaian at the time. Very soon.
You are getting a lot of love on social media. Here's a few comments. George Asante says, much respect to you, CEO of MTN Ghana. He says, over the years, MTN Ghana has been improving and they're becoming bigger every day. Anthony Amayo says, love Ghana, love MTN. May the Almighty bless you with good health to do more. And then a couple more here. Nanama says, Selorm is a different kind of leader. The man is just the same everywhere I meet him. In the lift, at a meeting, same event, same. And even in the office is the same. And then a couple more. Great job, brother. We give you full support. And then this one is also commending you on thank you MTN Foundation, Jones Della Amajo as well. Wow. So that was Selorm Adadevoh. Fascinating story. Coming in as an outsider to run this company, and in 5.5 years, we can see the fruits of great leadership. We wish him well in his future endeavor within the group, and we thank you for staying true to the point of view which came to you on CTTV. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.